Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
Thursday morning, starting to warm up here. This is right around the time of the year, Matt, as you know, as I'm sure is already marked on your calendar, when the maple sap flows here in northern DMZ.
When the first maple sap of the season is perfectly ready to be processed. Now,
tapped.
Bill, for those who don't know, we're using last year's so it doesn't really matter. This is it's for show. This is show.
Well, that's not going that far. If you went to if the Sugar Shacks are open, I'm not sure if they are. If the Sugar Shacks are open this season for weekend breakfasting, and you went on the first week or first couple of weeks, the bottles of syrup you're buying are probably from the past season because they're just starting the boiling process. I think by the tail end of the season, you might be getting, that season stuff.
Well, then that's when I'll be up there. It is great, dude. It was 64 degrees here yesterday. It was amazing, especially considering all the snow that we have gotten. So a little taste of spring and a little brings a little hope. And, it's the time of year when new life begins and when CPAC. And often what will happen, Bill, is after Republicans lose a presidential election, new life will begin to bloom at the CPAC. In fact, that may be the first sign where there's the cattle call, the auditioning of the next generation, the next field of Republican, hopefuls, presidential hopefuls, and yet that's probably not happening this year, is it?
Well, my understanding, I know, so Trump is speaking on Sunday. This is the Conservative Political Action Conference, for those who are not hip to CPAC yet. This has been going on for decades. I mean, Reagan was a star at CPAC before he was president, right?
1974, I believe he spoke at the first CPAC in 1974.
And so this is one of sort of the early building blocks of, what has become modern conservative political infrastructure. And I've only had the pleasure of attending one CPAC in 2007. You must have attended, what, 10?
Yeah, somewhere around 10 to 12, probably. I don't think I ever paid for one, but I've attended many. And
you're right. This tends to be, particularly in the farther away you are from a presidential election, you'll have lots of candidates. The straw poll is very famous. It's not necessarily a great bellwether who the actual nominee is going to be, but it is a temperature check on where that portion of the base is.
So in 2009, the year Rush Limbaugh was the big speaker, Mitt Romney won the straw poll. A year earlier, so that would have been early 2008. I believe that was the year when Sam Brownback's team allegedly followed Mitt Romney around in a flipper costume. So Romney did win that one. I believe the straw poll in 2017 was Rand Paul, I believe. So, yeah, it's not exactly predictive of the nominee.
Yeah, there was a time when Ron Paul and Rand Paul were disproportionately popular at CPAC. And that certainly, I think, warped matters for a time.
And by the way, that CPAC, the CPAC where Rand Paul won, you may remember Sarah Palin famously was drinking a big gulp on stage. That was the keynote that year. So
Ted Cruz won it in 2016, so it had not become Trumpified yet. But now we are expecting Donald Trump to speak on Sunday and in some way tease, if not flat out announce, a 2024 run.
By the way, I'm sleep deprived. I think I might have botched it. Did I say 2017 Rand Paul won?
No, you said 2009.
Okay, good.
Anyway,
I still might be wrong, but I'm closer to being right than if I had said 2017.
I'm looking here, and I think going back to 2007. This is a piece written in 2015, so it was 2007, 2014. The winner is in order: Romney, 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 Ron Paul, Romney, Rand Paul, Rand Paul, Rand Paul. So a little confusing because there was that time around 2008 and McCain, where Romney was looked more as the conservative alternative to McCain.
Well, and people forget this too, Bill. Mitt Romney dropped out of the 2008 primary at CPAC. Laura Ingraham Romney was supposed to give a speech. He was already lined up to give a speech at CPAC in 2008. And Laura Ingraham backstage finds out that Romney is about to drop out and tries to talk. She's a huge Romney fan. People forget. And people like Ann Coulter loved Romney. She was a huge Romney fan. Tries to talk him into dropping out. Then she goes out and has to introduce him. And it's a little bit awkward. But Romney actually announced he was dropping out of the presidential race at CPAC that year.
Yeah, so he had his fans at the time, but then as he became more of the establishment person and seen as more center right and not hard right, the Paul forces got stronger, and then as Trump was seen as not pure enough, Ted Cruz was the guy in 2016, but now Trump, as he has with much of Republican Party conservative infrastructure, Trump seems to be dominating it now. And if he does this on Sunday, that greatly impacts not just the 2024 field, but almost every aspect of the Republican Party and the conservative movement. He's basically saying, I'm not going anywhere.
Absolutely. And so I guess the one asterisk I would throw in there is any of these straw poll victories, I don't even think that they're reflective of the CPAC audience. They're reflective of organization. So people like Romney and Rand wanted to win the straw poll. And so they bust in typically young supporters just to vote. And some of them came in, voted, and probably didn't go to any of the speeches, So it's a test of organizational ability and of desire. But to your larger point, and I have a piece out in the Daily Beast today about this, this is the first sort of stop. This would be like the first event of the new, presidential field. And you would think that Republicans would want to get a new generation, test out a few new ideas, and people might want to introduce themselves and start building support. And Donald Trump won't let any of that happen. His presence at this event, he is going to overshadow everything, and he is going to prevent the party from moving on, the movement from moving on, and anybody who wants to be the next heir, the heir apparent, prevent them from that opportunity.
Well, but you can also look at that in the reverse. There are people in the party and the movement that are choosing to keep Trump at the center of all this, or choosing not to turn the page, or choosing not to take the opportunity for some intellectual and political renewal and allow a new generation to move up.
That's certainly true, but it's also a decision that leaders are making. And in this case, somebody like Matt Schlapp, who is like the chairman of CPAC or the American Conservative Union. And if he didn't want this to happen, it probably wouldn't be happening. So while it's true, I think in general that Republicans and conservatives are not ready to quit Trump, it's also true that there are leaders and gatekeepers who could nudge things in one direction or the other, and they are nudging in a Trump direction.
Yeah, and that's the part that I do find strange, because the people who are in the conservative business, you would think would be operating on a longer time horizon and do things that would be good for conservatism. Or whatever you think about Trump, he's not going to be around forever. So to hook your wagon to one guy, one aging guy, one defeated guy, a guy who offers you nothing in terms of building an intellectual framework for sustainability. Yeah, that just seems like a very short-sighted strategy. But clearly, the hold that Trump has on a good chunk of individual people, in that sense, makes it a sound short-term business proposition. You can get people to show up to your conference if it's gonna be another chapter of the Trump show.
Well, and they moved the conference to Florida. My whole life, as long as I can remember, it was in the Washington, D.C. area. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes it was in Crystal City, Virginia, which I don't even think exists anymore. I think it's called like Amazon Landing or something now. But there used to be a place called Crystal City, and then it was like at the Wardley Park Zoo Marriott, or I don't Omni Shoreham, and now then it was at the Reagan Building, and then now it's. And then I think it went back to the Omni. Now it is in the last few years it's been in Maryland, like right across the Potomac and National Harbor, and now it's in Florida. Now, there's a couple reasons for Florida. One reason is Florida doesn't care if you gather large groups of people together during a pandemic. But I suspect the other reason to do Florida is Donald Trump is in Florida.
And this really, as you mentioned before, this conference had such a tight association with Ronald Reagan. I mean, the one I went to, I mean, it's just, Reagan just gets pounded into you. And CPAC always busted a lot of college students. They give college students a lot of freebies or discount tickets because they want to groom a new generation. And they really wanted to establish, like, this is a Reaganite movement. Reagan's the icon. Reagan's the North Star. And to make this very Trump-focused, to put it in Trump's state, a state that has no association with Ronald Reagan whatsoever, is a bit of another symbolic break from what CPAC has always stood for and represented.
It's TPAC, and nobody's pretending anything different. But you could imagine a scenario where, the party said, we're going to, not the party, but the leadership said, we love Donald Trump. He was a great president, but we're moving on. It's time to move on and to look to a new generation. And so this, our theme this year, instead of being about canceled America or whatever the ironic, the theme, do you remember it, Bill? The theme this year was like something to do with cancel culture, which is ironic because they canceled some hip hop artist who just happened to have some anti-Semitic things in his background. Every year you can set your watch by it. Every year there is a big uproar over somebody being disinvited. It was Mitt Romney last year. It was like Milo Yiannopoulos a couple years ago. It happens all the time, but the theme could have been something about the future, and you could have made that argument without dissing Donald Trump. But everything has to be about him.
Do you think Trump's full entry or semi-entry into 2024, does that make other elements of the party move in the opposite direction? Does it make anyone say, okay, I want 2024, I want to win, or I want someone else to win. We need to do some more active effort to distinguish ourselves to prevent Donald Trump from hijacking the party once again? Or do you think we're just going to have more abject surrender?
Abject surrender.
Let me segue to another topic, which is relevant, and and that is how Republicans are going to deal with the pandemic relief bill. If you're going to have some kind of clean break, you might work with Joe Biden, work with Democrats, and support the bill to show, hey, we're not going to be the nihilistic party of the past. We're gonna show we can be bipartisan, we can cooperate, we can put country over party, et cetera, et cetera. We're not seeing. There's no Republican in Congress who has said he or she will vote for it. House Minority Whip's office is whipping against it. Mitt Romney. Well, before we get to Mitt Romney, let's keep in mind Susan Collins said that talks with the White House have stalled. There had been some talks. They've stalled out. She wants to pursue amendments on the floor instead. And then,
as you remember, Bill, 10 Republicans met with Joe Biden.
Right.
They offered a compromise, which was only $600 billion.
Well, they made an opening bid, I'd say. They didn't offer a compromise. They said, here's our offer. It was much lower than Biden's offer. Biden said, I don't need to go there, and has not offered concessions.
But let me just play out how it might have gone down. My recollection is that they had a meeting, which was great, and then Jen Psaki, the press secretary, put out a statement a couple hours after the meeting, basically saying, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to do it our way. We're going to use reconciliation. Now, the problem with that is they're assuming that they're going to get Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, which today seems to be not necessarily a safe assumption. But there's been other reporting, Bill. There's been reporting from Politico that suggests that, like, Biden will be talking to Susan Collins, and he'll be very interested in negotiating. But the White House staff, Ron Klain or others, are basically interfering or tamping down on Biden's interest in bipartisanship. And this, I have to say, this is something that I had been concerned about leading, up to Joe Biden's election, and it's something that I was concerned about. I was saying I don't like the way Biden ran as a someone who could work across the aisle and wanted bipartisan as part of the promise of Biden, and to immediately, like within a week or two of becoming president, to not to basically just push away these overtures, I thought was off brand. Anyway.
Well, it's definitely been a consistent message from both Group of 10, Collins' Group of 10, and Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell's essentially relaying what Group of 10 people are saying, that there is a divergence between Biden's attitude and the staff's attitude. There's a CNN piece about that not too long ago that quoted a lot of those Republicans complaining and saying, Biden was very engaged with us person to person, and then nothing follows from that. And then that's the staff pushing. That Klain was shaking his head grumpily during the Group of 10 meeting, so on and so forth. And I can only draw from that. I mean, there's two ways to draw from that thing. One you can say it's just straight politics. You're trying to create a narrative that Biden is not running the show, that Biden's being pushed around by the more partisan and aggressively progressive elements of the party. And the other way to interpret it is they're trying to drive a wedge between Biden and his staff, and so Biden perks up and says, no one's going to tell Joe Biden what to do. I'm going to get on the phone with Susan Collins and strike a deal. And maybe the two things aren't necessarily diametrically opposed to each other. But you still have Susan Collins saying, look, these talks have just stalled out, and so we're going to bring amendments to the floor. So people understand the reconciliation process. We have the budget resolutions, which are the first step in the process. Those are non-binding pieces of legislation that don't go to the president, but they kickstart. You can't get to a reconciliation bill until you pass the resolution first. The resolution has the reconciliation instructions to the committees. The committees draft their pieces of the bill. That's happened on the House side already, and the House is planning to vote for the entire bill tomorrow, Friday. And then that goes to the Senate. The Senate will have an open amendment process. So Collins and other Republicans can put amendments on the floor. If they get 51 votes for those amendments, they get put in the bill. Now, they could get taken out when you have the House-Senate conference, but it's not implausible that Republicans will put things in the bill that some Democrats don't like with the help of a Joe Manchin or a Kyrsten Sinema or other moderate types. And then the question becomes, do those Democratic moderates say, these amendments have to stay in this bill, or you don't have my support for the overall bill? Or will they say, I voted for that amendment because it's going to make me look like I'm bipartisan, but I'm not going to insist upon it, and the eventual bill, and we'll strip them out, and then we'll vote a party line bill at the end of the day. I don't know which way that's all going to go. I don't know to what extent a Manchin or Sinema are going to, throw a flag, as would happen with the Neera Tanden nomination, and say, look, I'm out. You have to talk to Susan Collins now, or else I'm not in. We don't know any of that yet. But we don't know to what extent. I think at this point, a Manchin or a Sinema is going to have to play that card to bring more bipartisanship into this process. And if that did happen, then does Biden come back in and work out that kind of deal, saying, look, hey, Democrats, we tried to do it party line. I held the line as much as I could, but look, I need Manchin's vote. I need Sinema's vote. We got to talk now. What's hard to know from the outside is, to what extent is anybody playing a long game here? To what extent is this all just improv as we go? To what extent is Biden being contained? It's hard to say yet, but and I would not say I would put money on a bipartisan outcome at this point, because there's no obvious indications of it. But the game is not quite over yet.
Sure. I would just say I put a lot of the blame for this on Biden, because it's not like Adam Kinzinger is against this. Mitt Romney, Susan Collins. If, Biden started off his presidency setting the tone that said, I don't need you, Republicans. We're going to do it without you. And you're welcome to come to the White House, but we're doing it our own way because we know better. Now, elections have consequences. If he wants to play that game, he's welcome to play it, but there are consequences to that game. And if he wants to play that game, he better damn sure have Joe Manchin's vote in his pocket. He better have Sinema's vote. If he doesn't, it doesn't work.
This is the whole issue.
Everything that he does.
Well, I would characterize it a little differently. I mean, I'm not in whole disagreement with you, but I would characterize it differently. I don't think he is being. I don't think he's trying to be condescending and say, "I won, you lost, suck it up." The message from the White House is, this is a very popular bill. This bill has support from Republican voters. This bill has support from some Republican governors and Republican mayors. I would love it if you would join my bipartisan bill, but that's your call, not mine. That's the message. That's the message as it stands. Now, to your other point, one thing that is surprising to me at this juncture, Biden does know he can't do 50 votes for everything. Not everything can get into a reconciliation bill. You can't do voting rights in a reconciliation bill. There's a lot of immigration you can't do in a reconciliation bill. We'll find out very soon. We don't know if we can do minimum wage in a reconciliation bill yet. We'll find out with the parliamentarians' decision.
I don't think you should be able to. It's incidental to the budget. We'll
find out what the ruling is. I lean to that being the likely outcome, but it's one person's decision, and we can't be a mind reader yet.
That's Lewis's law, for those who don't know. It doesn't pass the Lewis law test.
But Biden knows he needs 60 for some of his things. And he either is presuming, look, reconciliation is not a norm-busting activity. Every president has done some reconciliation bill. The Republicans did reconciliation for tax reform, party line vote. Clinton did reconciliation for his tax increase, party line vote. I think the George Bush tax cuts, at least one of them was reconciliation, although it got a few Democrats on board, but they were short of 60 because they lost a few Republicans. So this is not out of the norm, and therefore I can do this and not burn the bridge for the next thing. I'm not talking in such an obnoxious way that I'm going to cut off those avenues. However, there's also been some body language from the White House that, hey, if Republicans are going to vote against this, they're going to pay for it in the midterms. We're going to run on this. And if Republicans conclude, even the more moderate ones conclude, hey, they're not interested in lifting us up. They're not interested in giving us political cover. If they're going to be kneecapping us for the next year and a half, why should we help? Yeah. I mean, this is where polarization and mistrust is very damaging to bipartisanship. Democrats, many, come with the attitude they don't want to help a Biden presidency. We saw what they did to Obama. All they want to do, if there was to be a deal, it would be make it watered down and ineffectual so they could run against us in 2022. Why play that sucker's game? The only way you actually get to 60 is if there is some sense of common interest. You'd have to have a structure where Biden is saying, I really do need 60 for some things down the line. So this is my lowest hanging fruit. This super popular bill is my best chance. If I can just bend a little bit, maybe I can get to 60. So I should try it. The Republicans would say, and I have a piece in the monthly coming out about this soon, hopefully. This is a very popular bill. So this is the chance to safely cross the aisle, not offend all the Republican base, because so many Republicans actually want free money. Free money is often very popular, just like Bush tax cuts and Reagan tax cuts were very popular. And Trump checks were very popular. So I can do this one. I can for people like Romney and Collins who don't want a Trumpified party. This is their chance to say, look, we're running the show, not them, and we're going to find a way to come to agreement on things while maintaining, our Republican principles in other areas. There has to be a sense that this is good for the Republican Party's long-term interest and the Democratic Party's short-term interest if you're actually to get to 60. At this point, I'm not expecting that.
No, look, I would say a couple things. One, people like Mitt Romney have legitimate philosophical problems with the amount of money and with some of the way the money is being spent. You could say, hey, elections have consequences. We won, you lost, and we're going to do what we're going to do. And that's what Biden's saying. No, he's saying it nicely. He's not saying it like Obama said it, which is very bluntly. But he's essentially saying, we won, you lost. It's awesome that you have these concerns, but tough because the American public likes this, and we won, and maybe even the Democrats have a belief that spending too little would be worse than spending too much, even if there's waste and a certain amount of money being spread around to Democratic constituencies. That's the cost of doing business. Here's the problem. I'm back where I was with the Obama years, which is, and it's hard for me to say this because I'll begin with the obvious caveat. Donald Trump was a bad president, and he did not do the things that I am urging Joe Biden to do and that I urged Barack Obama to do. But I believe the onus is on the president, whoever the president is, to be the person who fixes this problem and heals. And there's an irony involved in that. And the irony is that the person who is the leader and the powerful person must also be the servant leader. You know, they say you never stand so tall as when you stoop to kiss an ass. What we need is someone who is in a powerful position to then humble themselves a little bit and reach out to Republicans. Maybe the Republicans don't deserve it, but to do it because it's for the good of the country and it's the right thing to do. And they get to save face too. The Republicans get to say, if you're a Republican, you get to say, we got to give money to people who need it right now because of this, horrible pandemic, but we also got to cut some of the waste and redirect it. We got a part to play in it.
Well, let me. Oh, sorry. Do I finish up?
I'm done.
I just want to say two things quick. First, on the smaller point, just to understand the polling here. The polling for this bill is considerably stronger than it was for Obama's stimulus, considerably stronger than it was for the Bush tax cuts, and even a little bit stronger than it was early on for the Reagan tax cuts. This is as it stands, I mean, poll numbers can change, of course. As it stands, this is a very, very, very popular bill. Now, of course, you can say, look, people don't know the details of it. Maybe once the Republicans start doing their pushback, maybe those numbers will come down. I don't discount those possibilities. I do think Republicans are a month late to prosecute that case. The House vote's coming up tomorrow. The Senate vote won't be that much longer unless things get very hinky and everyone's on board, and then things might be different. But
don't you think, though, the incentive structure, we're past the point where that matters. They're immune to arguments over something's popular. That's not what motivates them. And honestly, that's not – I mean, the way that Republicans – if Republicans have a good midterm, it's not going to be because they help Joe Biden pass his agenda, even if that means giving out free money to people.
Well, this is the point.
Wait a second. It's going to be because of 9 months from now or 15 months from now, there's some culture war issue that catches fire and they have high turnout in a midterm year. That's how they win. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're trying to persuade them, I don't think it's effective to say this is popular with the American public. I just don't think that works. I think there are other ways to persuade them. And in fact, amazingly, I would say altruism is actually a more persuasive argument in this case than the popularity argument.
Well, I think the term mutually exclusive. You could mix in the altruistic with the self-interest. And this is the point I make in the monthly piece that's in the queue. A lot of Democrats voted for the 1981 Reagan tax cut. Over 130 House Democrats, over 37 Democratic senators, and Democrats gained seats in the 82 midterm, and very few of those who voted for the tax cuts lost their own races. The 82 midterms were not decided on the tax cut. I mean, this is the thing. By voting for the popular thing, you potentially take it off the table as a midterm campaign issue, and you can then go focus on something else that's in your interest. In the 82 was Social Security and the hangover from the 82 recession. So that's why I think it would be useful for Republicans to think about the history here, because they don't have to look at it as sacrificing their political standing. This is about taking a potential wedge issue off the table so they can prosecute their case on something else down the road. Now, to get back to something else that you were saying about Romney and his philosophical principles, So read his Wall Street Journal op-ed if you can sneak around the paywall. What I did, I think the first time I clicked it, I could read it, and the second time I clicked it, I couldn't read it. So maybe you can get past on the first try. I would not characterize
my wife. It's funny. My wife actually has an account, but the Wall Street Journal is so like persnickety. Is that the right word? I don't know. Their paywall is so undefeatable that the only way I can't even like log in with her. I just have to have her print things out for me like I'm an 85-year-old, curmudgeon. If I want to read a Peggy Noonan column, it's like a 5-step process.
Wait. When you read the Romney column, I would not characterize it as philosophical. He's not saying that there's no cause for government spending in this crisis. He's not taking it that far. The biggest complaints are that of the $1.9 trillion under the CBO, Congressional Budget Office analysis, about $700 billion of that is not spent in 2021, and suggesting this is wasteful, it's not related to the pandemic, so on and so forth. I don't know how fair an argument that is. I know at least for part of that money, which is school money, that's stretched out over several years. And the White House argument is we want schools to be able to hire teachers and staff so we can do smaller class sizes and do pandemic mitigation, contain spread. And those hiring decisions are not one-year decisions. So the school budgets need to be able to project out 5 years before they can hire somebody, and we want to help with that. That's just one piece of it. It's not the entire thing, and I'm not here to adjudicate it. I'm just saying there is some debate there. But Romney ends his thing by saying there's still room to compromise. So if this wasn't so far along in the process, if there wasn't so little in the way of negotiation to this point, you might look at the op-ed as saying, hey, you're laying out some contours of where common ground might be. The money spent in 2021, according to CBO, is about 1.2, 1.3 trillion. That's not that bad a figure. I'm not saying Biden should end up right there, but if you ended up between 1.2 and 1.9, and that was their common ground, I don't think people would be all that upset. Now, I think at this point, it would require Joe Manchin or Sinema to say, hey, I really like that Romney op-ed. I think he made a lot of good points. I think we should come down to maybe 1.4, 1.5, and I'm going to hold this up until we do that. He's made no indication he's prepared to do that yet. He still could, but all this is to say that I think Romney, keep in mind, Romney has also reached out on child poverty. He's got a $10 minimum wage bill with Tom Cotton. He just said this week that he's open to a carbon tax. There's some indications he's open for business, yeah, and would like to steer the party in a different direction.
Unlike Cawthorn and Gates, Romney is not putting his entire staff on press. He must have a think tank, a little policy shop in his Senate staff, apparently.
So again, I don't think we're on the cusp of a breakthrough here by any stretch. The more likely outcome is that we stay party line. But to your other point, it only works if you have the 50. The downside risk of reconciliation and party line legislating is if you fail, if one of yours breaks ranks, then you own all of the failure. And mind you, this could happen both on the Manchin side of things and on the AOC side of things.
As may be the case with Neera Tanden.
Well, she can't do anything with Neera Tanden, but minimum wage. First, what AOC recently said is, if the parliamentarian keeps it out, she'll accept that.
Keeps it out of the COVID.
Keeps it out of reconciliation. Yeah. She'll accept that ruling. If the parliamentarian puts it in, and then someone like Manchin comes in, knocks it down from 15 to 11, then she's out. Because 15 was already a compromise. So that might also be an issue if the parliamentarian does keep it out, but you're negotiating a minimum wage bill separately, getting some Republican support for 11 or 12 or something like that. Does that make you lose your left flank in the House and risk its failure there? So, but to go to the initial point, when you go party line, you better have your party in line, or else that would be maximum humiliation. Now, people I talk to online think, oh, well, Manchin wouldn't do that. Sinema wouldn't do that. Push comes to shove. It's crunch time. It's the final vote. They're not going to backstab their own party. And look, that might be right. That might be the gut call that they make. But if you're Joe Biden, if you're Chuck Schumer, you better be sure, because if you're wrong,
they may
you're very, very wrong.
They may front stab. I mean, they may just, Joe Manchin announced very early he would not get rid of the filibuster. There could be something, he could announce tomorrow that he's not going to vote for anything over 1.5 trillion. You know what I mean? That's not backstabbing, but it is going against your team, So anyway, before we go, I mentioned this earlier. I have a piece in The Beast about CPAC, and it's mostly forgotten, but Donald Trump's 2013 CPAC speech was a big deal, and I think it kind of helped normalize him as he was a birther. His big argument was birtherism, but he was given that platform. Now, he may or may not have made some donations to procure that platform. He certainly made them afterwards. I'm not sure about before, but whatever the case may be, it's funny, Bill. In the past week, you and I have both written dueling pieces about Rush Limbaugh and the Tea Party, which turned 12 last week. Thanks for noticing. And in my pieces, I argued that Rush Limbaugh and the Tea Party were both instrumental in giving us Donald Trump. And I'll throw in the hat trick, the CPAC speech in 2013 that I think helped open the door for Donald Trump's takeover of the Republican Party. If you want to, this is it's an excuse to plug our columns. Go read them; they're good.
And I think it's worth going back looking at the Tea Party columns, because we haven't had that Tea Party moment yet. We haven't had that moment where the conservatives had a rallying cry around some sense of democratic overreach. But I think you are starting to see the initial attempt to try to replicate that. To calling the House bill the Pelosi's Payoff to Progressives Act, and even some of the Romney stuff, is in that vein, even though it's not as harsh. And this is the thing. I think Democrats do need to. It's one thing to ride high now, and you certainly can argue that Biden has no reason to trim his own sails preemptively when he has public opinion as high as he does on this. But you can always go one step too far. You can always assume you have more popularity than you do and give your opponents an opening, and make them more unified than they currently are. So I think every Democrat should go back and watch that Tea Party speech and think about, am I doing something here? I mean, look, you can go do something that is going to bring about the backlash. You do it anyway because you think, look, I got 2 years to get stuff done, and I could lose the Congress in short order. So you get done while you got the time and you got the power. That's a perfectly logical and reasonable argument to make. But you still want to think through what might happen when I do X. What is the push when you do the pull? And how am I going to deal with that when it comes? People should not assume that you got 50 votes and 76% approval for your bills every step of the way.
I like it. And if Joe Biden wants to, do something popular, he might want to open schools too. That'll be a nice touch.
Well, again, this is an interesting point because there is school money in the pandemic relief bill, as I said before. It is spread out over years.
Money. We don't need money. We need him to open schools.
But he doesn't have the power to do that. I mean, we don't have, as conservatives love to tout, local school control. That's what conservatives want. They don't want federal school policy.
I agree. Well, I feel that way about the minimum wage, by the way. But I do think that he is in a position to use the bully pulpit, and he has not done that.
Well, I don't think it's totally fair. He's not saying keep schools closed. I think he's being very nuanced. He's being very sensitive to the teachers' union aspect of the issue. But he is still leaning towards moving towards school openings. And
is it still 100 days from now? Every day it's 100 days from now, right?
Well, I mean,
until we get to June, and then.
Forgive me, I've not done the combing through every statement and every nuance of every statement. So if you know something that I don't, feel free to correct me. My understanding was, at least recently, what the White House has said is the 100-day mark was about schools being open at least partially, not schools being open 5 days a week. And that may be a benchmark they can still hit if they haven't already hit it.
How does that make you feel, Bill Scher?
Well, I mean, my kids are in hybrid school. They go to school twice a week in person as it stands. So we're in that benchmark. We've already met it. Look, I want them in 5 days a week at this point. That's just me.
My wife wants them at military school. So I mean.
Well, I heard the school board out in California, they were joking on a hot mic, that these parents just want their kids to have a babysitter. I'm like, hell yeah, that's exactly what I want. How is this some kind of insult?
Let's quit while we're ahead, Bill. Another award-winning show. Should I tease tomorrow, or is that premature?
I mean, we have a DM Zoom planned.
We do, and we have a special guest. We do this from time to time. It's Will Salatan, national correspondent for Slate. And so he is somebody who's a little more on your side of the aisle, right? Center left, I would say.
I mean, he's definitely had a centrist reputation for a very long time. But more leaning to the left than to the right.
I'm not going to ask him about any controversies at Slate.
Okay.
Because I don't want to go on someone's show and have them ambush me and start asking me about different people that pay me money. But a lot of times these Zooms it's just me and you, and we have a great following, a community of people who join these calls, and they participate in them. And it's usually a conversation. Now, with tomorrow, when we have a guest, which I think we've had Ross Douthat on.
Yeah, the Joe Trippi.
Have we had McMurphy, maybe?
No, we didn't. We haven't had Murphy.
He's definitely been on my podcast a bunch. But we've had some very good guests, here and there. And usually
we had Kornacki. We had Steve Kornacki.
We had Steve Kornacki. You can't do better than Steve Kornacki. That's Cooperstown. Speaking of Cooperstown, we've had Dave Petrugia.
Yep.
David Petrugia. So I think tomorrow with Will, it'll be. I'm going to simulcast this on the Matt Lewis and the News podcast. So you and I will maybe talk to him, ask him questions for 20 minutes, and then we'll open it up for a Q&A and a conversation with the crowd. But how can people, let's say you're out there, you're listening to this, you're a DMZ head, how do you participate in this?
Got to be a Patreon supporter. Don't have to spend a lot, just chip in a buck. And
it's no longer an option with me.
Oh, your minimum's higher?
It's a $3 minimum, my man.
Well, then so you're the state with the exorbitantly high minimum wage. I'm the state undercutting you with my lower minimum wage, and I'm gonna poach all your jobs.
people moving to Northampton for this. I don't know. So I have found that my theory is that if people will give you $1, they'll give you $3. If it's the price of a cup of coffee, it doesn't matter if it's $1 or $3. They view it as just change.
Well,
that's my theory.
If you have this Gilded Age philosophy of Matt Lewis and want to throw all your hard-earned money to him, go right ahead. I'll stand with the little guy. I'll stand with those who buy the penny candy, and be the voice of the masses.
So if you want to support Bill, it is, lowbrow Patreon page for a mere $1. You can go to patreon.com/Bill Scher. If you would like to be a part of a more elite community, you can come to patreon.com/Matt Lewis. Either way, you'll be invited on any of these Zoom calls that you and I do, the DM Zoom.
And be able to participate.
Yeah, you don't just get to – it's not just us yapping. You get to participate, talk, ask questions. We've got a great community. It's awesome. We've made friends with people that I didn't even know before. Now I feel like we're BFFs. The other thing people should do is follow us on Twitter at DMZ Show. Bill, how do you like it? I have lately taken snippets of these conversations of the DMZ, and I've tried to catch you in some awkward positions. And I've selectively edited, and then I'll tweet the video. Like I did that with the Corn Pop video. How do you like that?
Well, I'll tell you with the Corn Pop video, there's a friend of mine who I hadn't talked to in a year or so who saw that on Facebook and called me and said, "What the hell's going wrong with you? You cut your hair, shave your beard, you're falling apart."
People, it's funny. I used to think that it was only my female colleagues who would have unsolicited comments about appearance, but it turns out that the criticism that we are subjected to because of our unkempt appearance it's really borderline harassment.
I'm going to leave it there, Matt. I'm going to leave it on that note.
But here's the thing: if you want to really give us heck about our looks, you could join the DM Zoom. And I tell you what, I bet you I'm going to let my hair go for a while. But there's going to come a moment. And I mean, let's be honest, Bill. My hair has probably sunk my cable TV business. It's probably made me unemployable in some ways. But there's going to come a day. There's going to come a day where I decide to cut it. Now, why couldn't we do that for charity on a DM Zoom? I don't know, Marine Toys for Tots next Christmas. I don't know what the occasion will be. But would you be willing, for the right price, Bill, for the right cause, to do a DM Zoom completely bald and shaven?
Bald and shaven? No.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
For the children, Bill.
No,
for the children.
Not for the children. I will raise money for kids other ways. Bald, no. This is a face that cannot pull off bald.
Well, that's what makes it worth it, though. See, that's the thing. If we did it and you looked like The Rock, then there's no fun.
See, here's the problem.
If you look like Uncle Fester, then then you're going to get the big bucks.
I need to hear it from my own kids. And when I had one day with a mustache, and it was just like a day of misery of being yelled at that I had mangled my face. So the psychic cost is too steep.
The amazing thing is, I still have video and photos of the mustache that will live on in perpetuity.
And even when I shaved the mustache off, that didn't help matters. I days and days. Why'd you get rid of your beard? Blah, 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 blah. I can't bear it. We'll do.
I'll
fundraise for something else with some other. I mean, I can humiliate myself for all sorts of causes, but that's a line I'm not going to cross.
If you're not willing to do what it takes for charity, then I guess we're just gonna let it go. We're not cutting our hair. We're not shaving our beards. My wife won't. That's right. I said it. My wife won't let me grow a beard. I said it. I'm man enough to say it. So I can't grow a beard.
So you there are lines you won't cross.
I can't. She won't let me, Bill. I could. Anyway. Can't do it. Not allowed.
Not prudent at this juncture.
Wouldn't be prudent. Okay. Well, I've said too much. Bill's not willing to do what it takes for charity. That's okay. Some of us, we've got different standards. So join us with Will Salatan tomorrow, for heaven's sake, on the DM Zoom. And we'll see you next week, where we will have even longer hair.
Right. Till then, take care.